thank you. That was beautiful. Very beautiful. I wanted to mention a song that, well, first of all, I don't know that any of us knew, most of us didn't know that Ed Dugan could sing, and not only that, but accompany himself on the guitar. And he did a great job of it, I might mention, at last Friday night music. And it was great job. I loved the song. I loved it so much that I knew when I heard it, I thought, there's a sermon in that. Just perfect. I'm going to read a few of the lyrics here in a minute. There is something special about music. And you said that yourself this morning, Tammy. That was perfect timing that you said that. This particular song, and it's called The Cape, but it really is I have faith in my cape. And has anyone heard it that wasn't there that Friday night? I don't know that I had ever heard that song, but it's... You would be amazed that in 171 words, that this, the man that wrote it, Guy Clark, he gives us the story of a young man at 3 stages of life. He's optimistic. He's a risk taker. Is he successful? Maybe. We don't know. We don't know that. We're not too sure, but that's not really the point. The point of the little story is that whatever the risks were, our main character was willing to take them throughout his life. It's a universal theme, you know, that most of us can relate to. Maybe you're the kid jumping off the garage, and maybe you're the person who says he's acting like a kid. But we all place ourselves somewhere in this story. And how does Clark achieve it? In 171 words. Here it is. 8 years old, with a flour sack cape tied around his neck. He climbed up on the garage, figuring, what the heck? He screwed his courage up so tight, the whole thing came unwound. He got a running start, and bless his heart, he headed for the ground. Well, he's one of those who knows that life is just a leap of faith. Spread your arms and hold your breath, and always trust your cape. All grown up with a flour sack cape tied around his dreams, he's full of piss and vinegar. He's busting at the seams. He licked his finger, checked the wind. It's gonna be do or die. He wasn't scared of nothing, boys. He was pretty sure he could fly. Now he's old and gray, with a flour sack cape tied around his head. He's still jumping off the garage, and will be till he's dead. All these years the people said he's acting like a kid. But you know what? He did not know he could fly. And so he did. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about faith, and the metaphor that he uses is the image of the cape, of course. And that was recognizable symbol of invincibility to his audience to drive a song. And I'm sure that Superman's cape came into there somewhere, into his mind. And the cape is such an evocative metaphor. And he doesn't have to spend much time developing that character. He just uses the words and the symbolism to show what you can do with your life if you have a little faith. Now, I had used that little story in the song just to describe that when we develop our faith, we recognize that faith is like a muscle, and the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. But if you are determined to stay within and to stay in the dark, and if you're timid and you're afraid, your fear will always, always, always let you down. Always. You won't achieve your goals if you're going to listen to your fear instead of your faith. Faith is like having supernatural strength. Just like his cape. That's just a symbol of what's holding you. All the songs this morning were perfect. You're the face of God. You're the heart of God. You're the love of God. You have all the attributes that the Master Jesus said that you have. You're the light and love of God. You just have to recognize it. You just have to put on your cape, maybe. But anyway, thank you, Ed, for introducing us to that sweet little song. So then, the question is, how does one maintain? How does one develop his or her own faith? It's developed by continuing on the spiritual path and going through all those divine experiences, spiritual and otherwise, even though we might have fear. We remember that we do have a power. Maybe we're not wearing a cape, but we can always pretend that we are if we need that to feel the power of God coming through us. So the spiritual path, going through divine experiences in our hearts and our minds, it's what we're doing every single day. Similar to how people begin to grow their businesses faster as they see their earnings increase, right? Our faith gets stronger as we begin to uplift ourselves. I know we've seen it even in congregations. Tammy and I were speaking about that this morning too, before the service, about how it works when you really, really care. And then you have faith, and you develop it a little more, and a little more, and a little more. You could start out with 2 people in your congregation, and if you're doing the right thing and you're doing it from your heart, you will attract those who need to hear that message, who need the fellowship, who need to come and learn the tips for improving their lives. If you have the faith, and then the more you see people come and come and come again, the more it will develop your faith, just the way it will if you're trying to build a business. The first sale is monumental, isn't it? You see those sales coming in, the more faith you have. Faith is just like a muscle. And I know I've spoken before, and we will be at the end of this, what they call the season of Lent in certain religious circles. And there's a reason for that, because with Easter means rebirth. And so before the coming of the light, sometimes we recognize the darkness and we let it go. And I've told you the story about the Japanese military man that was on the, I can't remember which island it was. Was it Guam or whichever? Guam. He stayed for 26 years after the war ended because of fear. 26 years hiding in a cave because he was afraid to come out. The war was over. And so finally some guys saw him. It was still dark, and he was skin and bones. I don't think he weighed 100 pounds when they found him. He was just foraging and getting a few berries and whatever he could get here and there, but he was so afraid. He stayed in that cave for 26 years. And I know I've used that story, and it's true. I know I've used it many times to say, come out of your cave, whatever it is, whatever cave of fear you are living in, come out of it. Develop your faith. Become the person you were meant to be when you were born into this body. There was a potential. You had a potential to become many, many things. You were given many, many gifts when you came into this lifetime. And over the years, sometimes our fear has held us back, and we haven't become the person, the light that we could be if we release those fears. So we all know that oftentimes people will claim their faith is strong, won't they? They'll stand up here and proclaim it. Oh boy, I've got faith. The next thing you know, you get a diagnosis and you say, well, what? Where'd that come from? I don't know. How much faith do I have? Things like that happen to us. Then you face hard times, and that faith shatters because it's not developed through our own experiences. When faith is developed from inside ourselves, no matter what happens, we will remain strong. We will. That doesn't mean life is always easy, but we will remain strong. There was a man, a French acrobat named Charles Blondin. We would say Blondin in just regular old English. He was famous for his tightrope walking. In 1859, he completed his most famous tightrope walk over the 1,100 feet long Niagara Gorge. Can you imagine? He did it. Without any harness or net to help him, he walked the entire length with thousands of people watching on. He increased the challenge by trundling a wheelbarrow back and forth across the rope. Can you imagine that? People couldn't believe it, and they began to cheer and applaud him. He then asked the crowd, "Do you have faith in me?" "Oh, yeah. Yeah, we got faith in you." So he said, "Okay, who's going to volunteer to get in this wheelbarrow?" Everybody got quiet. Nobody from the crowd wanted to get into the wheelbarrow, except one man finally did. He said, "I have faith in you. I have faith in you." He got in the wheelbarrow. He was pushed across to safety. He just happened to be the manager Charles Blondin's manager, and as it turned out, he had seen him all these years. He had observed his skill and his ability, and he had faith in that. How much faith do you have? Do you have faith in your cape? Do you have faith in God to get you through whatever it is you're going through? Whatever it is. Or are you just going to fall back in fear and stay and hide in a cave? And you know what? Until we do experience that spiritual divine elevation inside of ourselves, we cannot develop enough faith to come out and even be among other people after a pandemic. Now, I'm not going to encourage anybody to put on a cape and jump off a roof. I guarantee you. But I am going to guarantee you that if you are stuck up on a roof and there's a flood, that God's going to send a whole lot of people to rescue you. Or the divine flow is that we call God. There are going to be a lot of things that are going to come to your rescue. And it will just depend on you whether you want to recognize it or not. Whether you want to see it as good. So I guess when I started out by saying that faith is like a muscle, and you must develop it just like you would your muscles, maybe a little bit at a time. Come on out and be with other people. Go ahead and put yourself out there. Apply for that job, even though you think you might not be qualified. Apply for it anyway. Go ahead if someone's asked you to give a speech and you're terrified, you're shaking in your boots. Do it anyway. Do it anyway. You may think you can't even make it down to the end of the street if you put on your walking shoes. Do it anyway. Apply for that principal job. You're probably the perfect one for that job. Aren't you, Christy? Thank God you applied for that. And thank God they have you. We're grateful. We're grateful for all the people that have the faith and the courage to step out and to step up and to become and to be. You might be saying, what, me? What, me? Become a physical therapist? Get my dogs trained to do therapy? Become an artist? I hear through my friend Reverend Alice that anyone can become an artist. They can learn those gifts. So whatever it is that you have hanging in your life, you know much more than any of us do. You know, we've all got something we're afraid of doing. We won't step forward. We won't do it because of fear. The Greek scholar Aristotle said, educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. So to become our best selves, we have to become educated in the things of the heart. And many times that's where our faith comes from. Love what you do or don't do it. Because people all around you can tell that you don't love what you're doing. These musicians love what they're doing, don't they? You can tell it. You see Tony on that drum? I'm telling you. That's inspiration right there. How do you strengthen your faith? Set a conscious intention to do that. Conscious intention. And remind yourself several times a day, every day. Choose faith over fear. Practice with small things. And then practice with all things in your life. Affirm, I don't know the answer now. If you're waiting for an answer to something before you step forward, but I will. I have the faith to hold on. I have the faith to not fall into fear. I have the courage to listen and to take one small step in faith. So this week I'd like for you to imagine every time that you need to have a little more faith, imagine that cape. Put it on. Imagine yourself on the side of the roof looking down. Say, I can do it. I just know I can. Take a leap of faith and improve your life one small step